Hello and welcome back. Today we are talking about the Sewcialites Sew Along, which is just about ready to wrap up. I know many of you are participating in this Sew Along, and for some of you, this might be the first time that you are hearing about Sewcialites. So before I share my blocks and kind of talk about how I'm planning on sewing them together, I will give you a little bit of info about how Sewcialites works. This is a quilt along hosted by Fat Quarter Shop. We're in round 2 of this Sew Along. So it's been happening over the course of the last couple years with a little bit of a break in between the 2 rounds. And Fat Quarter Shop puts all of the blocks free on their website, and they ask various designers to submit different block designs for this quilt along, and then they release them free and we all have the fun of sewing along. Both rounds have consisted of 3-inch blocks, 6-inch blocks, or 9-inch blocks. So you have the option of making your blocks in whatever size you want of those 3 different sizes. You can make a mix and match bunch of blocks. You can make all one size. You can do whatever you want in the first round and do something completely different in the second round. So it makes it very versatile. And then they will release several different, at least one layout option. But over in the Sewcialites Facebook group, I will make sure to link to that below, there are other ladies that are finishing up their blocks differently. So there are actually quite a few different layout options that you can see in that Facebook group. I have a different plan for my blocks, and actually it's changed quite a bit because I did round 1. I made all of the 3-inch blocks and I planned to sew them all together into a mini quilt, and I had my design already drawn up and I knew what I was going to do, and I drafted up the pattern for my alternate blocks for the setting, and then it never went any further than that. So when Sewcialites 2, when the second round started up, I thought, well, I am just going to continue making the 3-inch blocks, and then I will mix and match, put everything together all into one larger quilt. And that's what I've done. So all of my blocks are in the 3-inch size. And Vanessa Gertzen of Lella Boutique, she did a really simple and I thought it was pretty design for her Moda Blockheads quilt. This last round, round 4. And I am doing a version of that. I had to change the sizes just a little bit because her blocks were a different size than this 3-inch size, but I think it's going to work really well. I'm going to link to all of that Sewcialites block information down below. So if you are new to Sewcialites, those block patterns are still available for download. Or if you've missed a pattern here or there, or maybe you joined in on round 2 but skipped round 1 or vice versa, you will have all of that block pattern information should you want to make the blocks at any point in time. And if you look here, you can see I have all of my blocks laid out. These are, as I said, both round 1 and round 2 blocks. I ended up with 53. I'm not sure if that's how many I should have, or if maybe I'm missing something here or there. I didn't go back to look and see if there was the exact same number in round 1. My guess is that there was, and that I very well could be missing a block here or there. But when I planned out my layout, I knew I had 53 blocks, so that's what I planned it for. So if I have a feisty little block that's tucked away somewhere that doesn't make it into the quilt, this 3-inch size is such a nice size to use for a pincushion. Or of course I could make a few more blocks and turn it into something a little bit larger, but you know, a cute little block isn't going to go to waste. So if it shows up, if any of them show up at some point in time, I'll just put them to good use. But I thought we could take a look at these. I hadn't seen them all laid out all together until just now when I laid them out on the cutting table. I do like to periodically go through and kind of lay out my blocks, especially as I'm working on a project like this, where it has been a few years that I have been working on this project. And so I'll lay everything out here and there as I work my way through the quilt along, just to make sure that I have a nice selection of balanced colors. It's really easy. I found myself this spring making a lot of these green blocks just because after a gray winter, I was ready for some green outside. And so I was making a lot of green blocks, which I needed. But then I also realized as I got closer to the end of the sew along that I needed some more of these light gray blocks. So because I had laid them out, I could make sure that I was adding in some more of this light gray color just to kind of balance things out a little bit. And I'm really happy with the way all of the blocks work together. They are from two different collections primarily. I started round one using Springbrook fabrics, and then when I started round two, I was using mostly Buttercup and Slate, but still mixing in some of that Springbrook. And in one of my blocks, I saw a little bit of Sundrops up here. This little guy up here, that gray, is from Sundrops. So that would be a third collection that kind of worked its way into this quilt. This gray color is Moda Solid in the color Etchings Stone, and that is one of the grays that I reach for very often when I am looking for a gray solid, and I'm looking for a Moda. And then the white on white that I used, this was originally in Springbrook. It has a cute little orange peel print on it, but it is back in quilt shops now in my Coriander Seeds white on white line of fabric. I don't know if I've mentioned it here before, but those Coriander Seeds fabrics are here to stay, at least for a while, as a basic with Moda. So if you're familiar with those, that will make you happy. I know I'm excited to be able to hang on to some of my favorites for a little bit longer. I do have a video on those Coriander Seeds white on whites that I will link below too, so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. They're just really versatile white on whites that just add a little bit of a print to your backgrounds when you want something a little bit more than just a white. And I love working with them. They are pretty much the same color as Moda Solid in the color 9900-200, which is the color name is off-white. And that is also the white that I use for all of my backgrounds. So it's very nice to have that color in a white on white option. And it's got, you know, the little orange peels, but then little flowers on some of those other prints. There is a really pretty lacy, almost a doily sort of look, which is maybe my favorite. I don't know. I say I have a favorite, but then I change my mind the next time I pull one of them for a different project. But lots of little flowers, some good simple geometrics, a nice dot. So some nice options that you can use for those background fabrics. Going back to these blocks, I had a lot of fun adding in the little bees. These bees are from Springbrook. You'll see them kind of flying around here and there. And they were such a perfect size to fussy cut on the centers of some of these blocks. So that was fun to do. I did that more so in round two than I did in round one. But I just had a lot of fun sewing these together. Now I want to show you my layout plan. I've mocked it up in electric quilt. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fabrics I'm going to use too, so that you can see what my plan is. This is my plan for this round, well, for these 2 rounds of Sewcialites. This little checkerboard center here, the gray is these blocks, and then the white squares, I'm going to be using just a variety of low volume prints. I'll show you those in just a second. I pulled these 2 blocks from my stack of 3.5 inchers over here because these are the 2 that I designed for these 2 rounds of Sewcialites. This was the one I did for the first round. It's called Hardy, and then this is a miniature Christmas star block. And when Fat Quarter Shop contacted us this round for our block suggestions and designs, they said they wanted us to design a block that makes us crazy, I think was the way that they asked us. And they said that could either mean because you really, really like it a lot, or because it's just a little bit of a chiss. You guys probably don't know that word. I have, I live in an Amish community and have Amish background, so sometimes these little Pennsylvania Dutch words will work themselves into when I'm speaking, and that is such a good one, chiss. So it means like a fussy hassle, and I don't know of any English word that fits it quite as well. So a little bit of a chiss. This block is a little bit of a chiss, even in a larger size, but then when it gets down to this smaller size, it is just a little bit even more of a chiss. So Christmas Star is the name of this block, and I remember piecing this block in the first few years that I was making quilts, and it required templates and lots of triangles in that pattern. All of these pieces were templates or triangles cut individually. There was no stitch and flip. There was no easy methods like we have now. At least we weren't aware of them at that time to simplify some of these blocks. So when I was thinking about a block that makes me crazy, I thought, that Christmas star block. But thank goodness for new methods that simplify our piecing. This block really, well, it was a little bit of a fussy hassle. It was definitely a lot simpler than that first Christmas star block I pieced probably 20 years ago. And I just think it's the cutest little block with that fussy cut little bee in the center. So I was excited to have a very successfully pieced Christmas star block, which I could not have said so easily about 20 years ago. And there's your fun word of the day, chiss. So whenever something is a fussy hassle, I know that there's a lasagna recipe that I will sometimes refer to as a chiss because it just takes a little bit more work to make that come together. Maybe you have something like that it's just a little bit of a chiss to do. Now you have a word to use. Okay, we're going to move on here. I'm going to keep talking about this layout. I decided I wanted to, so Vanessa's layout, when she did hers, she did chunks of, I think just 2 chunks, one on the top of one print of fabric and then one on the bottom of her checkerboard portion of a different kind of fabric. And I decided I wanted to kind of split that up a little bit. So I think I'm going to use this Granny's Flower Garden print. This print is from Buttercup and Slate. And I'm going to use this in these portions here. And then I might use that Motabella Solid color 200 that I talked about earlier for this section here, or I might use this print from Buttercup and Slate in these pieces right here. I'm leaning this way right now, but we'll see what happens when I start sewing. And then I pulled just a few of these low volume-y sort of prints. So these would be the white prints in these sections here. And just to give you kind of an idea of what I'm thinking for those. And I'm just going to pull these from my scrap bin. I tend to have a lot of this sort of print in my fabric lines, kind of these white backgrounds with little bits of color. And so, of course, I've got to add those bees back in there. So I'm just going to pull some more of these sorts of prints and then add those in for those white squares. Now, I will make sure and link to Vanessa's original blog post for her Moda Blockheads quilt because I think that's just helpful to be able to see her layout. This would be a layout that would be fairly simple for you to figure out on your own based on the number of blocks that you're using in this portion of the quilt here, and then how much bigger you want the quilt to be. I don't know that any of you will be combining your round 1 and round 2 blocks into one larger quilt like I am, but it would be pretty simple to switch over and use the blocks that you're using and then, you know, however much bigger you wanted it to be. So it's a very versatile layout and it's a simple way to put these quilt blocks together. That is my plan for Sewcialites. I'm excited to see this one come together. I was just thinking today that part of the fun for me of YouTube is the accountability that you guys give to me, because I come on here and I say, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then I really need to do this and this and this. It's not going to be, hopefully, like my round 1 blocks that just kind of sat tucked in the corner a little bit while I got my ducks in a row to get everything finished, because I know that I'll get messages saying, hey, Corey, did you finish that Sewcialites quilt up yet? And I'll have to hopefully be able to say yes or get my behind in gear and get that finished. It's been a really neat bonus to filming videos here on YouTube that I hadn't considered about how much it does keep me working. So I appreciate that. For the most part. I think for all part I appreciate that, but it's kind of a funny thing to think about. So that's that. That's Sewcialites. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you have any questions about anything I shared today, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And I'll catch you again next time.